Jiro here from Umbra Games with a review of Digital Sun's Moonlighter, available on PC, Xbox One, PlayStation 4 and Switch digitally, as well as physical copies for PS4 and Switch released in the States November 9th, 2018. Moonlighter is an indie-developed 2D overhead action game where you play the role of Will, a shopkeeper that wants to help revitalize the once bustling town of Rinoka, and does so by delving into the city's nearby dungeons by night to obtain goods to sell in his shop by day. With the money earned from sales, he can help open support vendors as well as increase the capacity and efficiency of his own shop. Will also wants to solve the mystery of the dungeons, the 4 smaller ones as well as the strange-looking keyholes around the 5th dungeon that reportedly no one has ever managed to enter. Dungeon journeys are randomly generated in that there are a set of constructed rooms that will be put together in varying order. As you progress, you'll start to recognize signs that mark the correct pathway forward. Each dungeon is constructed of 3 levels with a boss at the end. You can re-enter dungeons once the boss has been defeated to claim more artifacts and items that were specific to that area, but you can only fight that boss the first time. Will's person and bag combined can hold up to 20 stacks of items, and know that bag size doesn't increase. Stacks vary depending on the item type, but most seem to be around 5 or 10. Your goal is to fill up that pack with each dive as best as possible for sale the next day. Now, this gets slightly more complicated by some items you pick up having a curse on them where they won't stack, where it has to be on a particular side of the bag, for example, on the leftmost column, or they may affect an item in a relative direction to it upon dungeon exit, either destroying it or transforming the neighboring item into it. This can be pretty easily solved by putting a "I'm going to destroy whatever is to the right of me" on the far right side of the bag, not giving it a target. Another curse example is that an item will break after Will takes a specific amount of damage. Regardless, expect to do some inventory juggling regularly. On any given dungeon run, should you lose all of your life, Will manage to keep what's on his person, so that top row of the bag, but all the rest of the 3x5 grid will be lost. Early on, you get a portal in which to drop things for a smaller amount of gold than what the item is worth, but it's better than just tossing it on the floor and leaving it to disappear. You also get an item that charges a small sum to teleport you out of the dungeon, ending the run with hopefully your bags full. Which switches us to the shop phase. Will's shop has a set number of podiums where things can be placed for sale. You get to choose the price and the quantity of your stock, and once your goods are laid out, you go to the front door and open the shop. As you watch customers browse, they'll have various reactions to your prices. If it's a bargain, for example, they'll have coins for eyes in their emoji, meaning you could have charged more. On the flip side, you can make someone upset by your price, they won't buy it, and it can also lower the popularity of that item, meaning trying to adjust it and find the correct market price is more difficult for a while. Each price and customer's reaction will be logged to Will's journal, and don't worry, you don't have to remember or even enter the price a second time, as next time you place the item on the pedestal for sale, it will go up for the last placed price. Once a customer has made a selection, they'll take it to the cash register where you complete the transaction. Why not just stay behind the cash register, you ask? Well, not only will you want to restock things pretty quickly when sold to keep your customers buying your goods, you'll also be changing prices because of a bad reaction from a customer, but you also have to watch out for shoplifters, who will flash a little bandit emoji when they enter, and after looking like a normal browsing customer for a while, they will grab an item and you have to run and spar with them before they make it to the door to get your stuff back. Once the shopping time has passed, your customers will head out, leaving you to restock if you still have goods, as well as prep for that night's journey back into the depths. You do have some chests in your shop that allow you to store additional goods you may not have gotten up for sale, or if they're things you want to hang on to, but you'll always want a clear bag when you make a dungeon run. You can choose to equip Will with a variety of weapons, of which you can simultaneously equip 2, switch between with the press of a button. The weapons I messed with both had an X and square action, the sword and shield swinging and performing a block, and the bow and arrow fired a regular shot, and then you can hold square for a charge shot. Will can also perform a dodge roll, providing a few frames of invincibility to help avoid enemy attacks. Now, as you expand the village, one vendor you'll open is a blacksmith who can upgrade your weapons and armor on various enhancement paths. Each weapon has 2 of these to choose from, but once a piece of gear is committed to one path, it cannot be changed. It's not to say you can't easily get a new piece of the same gear and take it down the other path. Specific items you claim from the dungeon will be used for these upgrades, and there's an excellent wish list system where you can mark any upgrade or gear piece you want, and when you pick up the items in the dungeon, it will show a green star by it, marking it as one of the needed pieces, so you know not to sell it. Same goes for the potion maker / enchanter you can make available, where you can buy potions and enchant your gear, increasing its efficiency. What's even better is items stored in your shop's treasure chests are directly applied to the crafting, so you don't have to worry about it being on your person. The dungeons themselves are comprised of 4 very distinct environments: Golem, Desert, Tech, and Forest. And although you'll see a bit of palette swapping on some enemies, there's enough variation in all of the enemy types to help each dungeon feel unique and require you learn how to deal with each foe you encounter. The drops pretty quickly develop a bit of the pattern feeling though, as you'll get new jelly from slimes to make the next level healing potion, and a new set of crafting drops in the same pattern as the last for the upgrade. As such, the game gets a bit formulaic and repetitive feeling in nature. For me, it was after the completion of the second dungeon, knowing I was just going to rinse and repeat for the third. After all, your only sources of character progression are getting more HP for upgrading your armor set and doing a little more damage with your weapons upgrades. So if you're not changing weapon types frequently, that monotonous feeling can kind of start to set in. Once you reach a certain point in the game, you also start getting requests from customers for specific items ready for them in a set amount of days. They're side quests of sorts, and the reward is usually a pretty decent cash reward, but it wasn't enough to motivate me to go back to a previous dungeon to get the items at the opportunity cost of going backwards a dungeon, and the increase in value of items between dungeons is fairly significant. Graphically, this game adopts a retro pixelized style, but with the animation frames, everything runs ridiculously smoothly. Combat is crisp and clean, and the game never once felt cheap, meaning the hit detection and responsiveness is really spot on. The music also does some great things, with a fairly catchy village tune, and each dungeon has its own musical score that intensifies as you go down each level. Overall, Moonlighter provides 2D overhead, tight combat through its randomly generated dungeons, tons of enemies to learn to deal with, lots of loot variety and a unique method of selling it, a decent selection of weapons to find something that matches your playstyle, quite a few enhancements to the shop and town worth working toward, with the dungeon dives feeling a bit too formulaic halfway through the game, and a very unique story conclusion to the game's mysteries. I'm seeing Moonlighter called a roguelike in many places, and I'm guessing it's the randomly put together dungeons requiring multiple runs into the same one that people are pulling this from. But there's persistence in your equipment. You don't level, so you're not really losing anything when you die, except 75% of what you're carrying, so I'm not sure it fully fits what I've perceived that definition to be, especially in comparison to other titles that claim the name. I wouldn't go action RPG with this either because your character doesn't level. But it did provide a very old school Zelda-esque combat experience, so we'll say 2D overhead action. I've also seen the term sim in regard to the game, and maybe I'm being a little too harsh, but this just really didn't feel like a sim. But I can mentally flex on that just a little since we are simulating a shopkeeper and buying some upgrades. With the combination of the two mechanics, it provides a pretty unique experience. Now, I love games that defy genres, but it sure does make them difficult sometimes for me to comparatively score. Rated as an overhead action, sim hybrid, Moonlighter hits a solid 72 on my true 0 to 100 scale, where 50 is average. This is Chiro for Umbra Games. Thanks for watching.